Welcome to the Inside Silverstone podcast, a business-focused podcast covering all things tech, engineering and innovation. Hosted by me, Chris Broome, a huge tech, motorsport and gaming fan, and also the owner of Longhurst, a firm of lifestyle financial planners and independent financial advisors located in Silverstone, Northamptonshire. This is a series of unscripted and unpolished conversations with leading business owners, thought leaders and high-tech talent where we discuss their experiences within the Silverstone business and motorsport region. We will also be asking them to share their knowledge, insight and their thoughts on the future just for you. If you're looking to learn more about the Silverstone high growth region and commercially connect with like-minded peers, you've definitely come to the right place. Welcome to Inside Silverstone. Welcome to the next episode of Inside Silverstone. My name is Chris Broome and I am your host. Today I am delighted to finally welcome to the show Julia Muir from two companies, CEO of Gaia Innovation and the founder of the UK Automotive 30% Club. Welcome to the show, Julia.
Thank you.
Julia, what I'd like to do, what is customary, as I always explain at the beginning of the shows, is to quickly run through a snapshot of your CV, if that's okay, so that we can give the listeners, our dear listeners, sort of feedback and an idea of your career to date and why we thought it'd be really good for you to come on the show. So is it okay if I just quickly do that?
Yes, past life flashing before my eyes.
Flashing before your eyes. Right, here we go. So basically, you've always worked, from what I can find out on LinkedIn and Google, always worked within the sort of automotive space. So career started off at Perry Motor Sales, then moved to Ford Motor Company, had a brief stint at Price Water Cooper as a senior manager, and then worked at Loughborough University as in their sort of centre for automotive management. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then in 2016, founded two businesses, Gaia Innovation and the UK Automotive 30% Club. Is that about right?
That's right, yes. But it started a bit earlier than that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that I started out in the automotive world by joining Perry's in the 90s. But actually, I was about 8 or 9 years old when I first started out in the motor trade as such, because my father established a business where he was repairing cars from a kind of home tune business, it was called in those days.
Okay.
So I was quickly immersed into the world of answering the telephone, booking customers in, sometimes accompanying my father out to watch him fix cars and doing his 54-point engine check with adjustments.
Right.
So the motor trade always seemed quite interesting to me. So when Perry's Motor Group came to university looking for graduate trainees and offering a company car as well as a paid internship, it was, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So I started out, first of all, on a placement during my degree programme at Perry's at Doncaster. Okay. And then, having finished my degree, then went to work for them full-time after that.
There we are. So that's the journey to where you are now. And along the way, you've also picked up a couple of awards, as I've read online. So 2016 won the was acknowledged with the Women's Automotive Special Recognition Award by the Women Automotive Group, and presumably that was for the work that you were doing with the UK Automotive 30% Club. Yeah,
that's right. Yes,
which we'll come on to in a minute. And then last year, 2017, nominated as a Financial Times Top 50 Women in Business Global Champions of Diversity, which again presumably was for your work with the Automotive 30% Club.
Well, both actually, because I was also listed in 2018 as well.
I've missed that. There we are.
Yeah, I see. But it is for the 30% Club, but it is also because a lot of the work we do with Gaia Innovation is to encourage particularly girls to equip themselves with the right skills to enter skills deficit sectors that tend to be male-dominated sectors.
Yes.
So it was in recognition of that work as well.
Well, congratulations, and congratulations
thank you very much.
for the follow-up in 2018. So let's talk about, what I'd love to do is talk about both of those businesses. So let's talk about the UK Automotive 30% Club, or the 30% Club as you call it. So for our listeners, what is that? What do you guys do?
Okay, well, I suppose I have to clarify, it's not really a business as such, it's a club. So
It's a
membership club.
Okay.
And I founded it, as you rightly said, 2 years ago, just about the same time as I founded Gaia Innovation, because it's serving a similar purpose. So the story goes that I was invited to be a speaker for the charity Speakers for Schools.
Okay.
To go into schools and talk to youngsters about my career or my personal story. And so, of course, I was going in armed with talking to them all about the automotive sector, but particularly about the future technologies, because that's my real interest. I'm very, I like to keep up to speed with what's happening in terms of the way that the industry is changing and developing. And it occurred to me as I was talking to the children, it just happened to be a girls' school, actually, that I was at, a grammar school in Kent. How, when I asked them at the beginning of the talk, so who was interested in a career in automotive, and none of them put their hand up at all.
Yeah.
That after I'd told them all about the fantastic opportunities and how it's structured and all the jobs and all the, the way that the industry's going, then I asked the question again at the end, and lots of hands went up.
Awesome.
And I thought, well, there's something quite important happening here, that girls clearly have written off any concept of joining the automotive sector way more than they were doing when I was that age. To me, to work for Ford or Vauxhall was a big deal. It was something to aspire to.
Yeah.
Not now, because we've kind of been knocked out of the way by people like Google and Facebook, the big tech giants.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're interested in that kind of big corporation to work for. So it got me thinking, and I thought, well, actually, what we need to do is I know we have a huge skills deficit in automotive, so we need the leaders of the automotive sector to actually publicly start to make noise about the fact that they need to hire a more inclusive workforce because of the changes that are happening in the industry. So there are many business reasons why you need a better gender balanced workforce. That companies are more profitable, they tend to be less risk taking, they tend to be a happier environment to work, employers are more motivated. So they're all good business reasons, but there's a real skills pipeline issue as to why we need a more inclusive workforce, because of the fact that the description of the jobs are changing so radically, and the profile of person that we need in the sector is changing. So I thought, well, what we need to do is we have to create a demand pull for young women into the sector by the leaders of the industry saying, we really want women to join us, and let's do stuff that will show that. And then at the same time, I set up Gaia Innovation as a way to create the push factor within the schools to help the children realise where the opportunities are. Because what it was very clear was, it's like the two worlds just weren't talking to each other, or just not aware of what was going on with each other. So schools don't know where the opportunities are, and don't therefore guide the children effectively to the right opportunities. And the employers aren't telling the children where the opportunities are, and aren't engaging, specifically with the people that have got the right skill set that they need for the future.
Right.
And so my idea was build the 30% club and get the demand going, and build Gaia Innovation and get the supply going.
So the demand, so how are you getting on with that? So these manufacturers, are you working with any of them? How's that gone? What's their sort of feedback, and what's their response been?
Well, we have 25 members of the club now. So it started off with a very small founding group, which included Toyota, Kia, Volkswagen Group, Bentley, Renault, and some of the major motor retailers, such as Lookers, Vertu, Inchcape, and now we're kind of moving on to some of the smaller players as well. And so the membership is growing. We do an annual conference every year where we share advice and guidance, and we've had 3 up to now, so in the time period. And really, this conference was a milestone, because what's now happening is that the members are wanting to do more, sponsor more activities. We are asking for a membership subscription now, which we didn't ask for before. I funded the entire costs of the 30% Club through pro bono activities of my own. But now people are putting sponsorships in to make sure that we can have some sustainable model moving forward, and that we can scale up significantly. And so our partner sponsor this year is Auto Trader. And we have our Volkswagen Group are sponsoring the Inspiring Automotive Women Day, where we will go out to lots of schools in the UK.
Awesome.
And Jardine Motor Group are sponsoring our first Inspiring Automotive Women Awards, which will celebrate some of the women in the sector.
Great.
But only from within the club members.
Understand. Okay. And do you have any sort of numbers or statistics on this from a sort of a gender and a diversity perspective within sort of automotive and sort of management levels? Any sort of data there or numbers that have sort of helped lead to do this? Yeah,
so the problem we face is there isn't really some robust data that has been collected across the UK industry. It would be great if that could be collected. What we did do, though, was set out just over a year ago to survey our members to find out what the gender gap was in our membership group. And what we found was that the manufacturers and the retailers have a slightly different problem, slightly different challenge, shall I say, in that the manufacturers, on average, start off with more women at the entry level than they do men, so roughly 60%.
Really?
And then every management level you proceed up, it literally halves.
Wow.
Until you get to know women actually doing the president or MD role of the manufacturers. So the scope, I must point out, the scope of the club is for the commercial divisions of the manufacturers. It's not for the manufacturing and engineering. So it's what we call the national sales companies. So it's the commercial functions of marketing, sales, digital, customer research, etc. So a big challenge really for them is why is that happening? Are women leaving and then not being replaced by women? Are they only being replaced by men if they leave? Is it that women don't progress up through the ranks? And these are the kind of questions that analysis has prompted. On the dealer side, it's a slightly different shape of structure, in that they start off with fewer women in the entry level, so roughly about 25%.
Okay.
And then it goes narrower, as you proceed up the management levels until you get to the director level of a group, where suddenly more women come on board again.
Why is that?
And that's because they hire from the outside people like HR directors, marketing directors, legal counsels, which are often women.
Presumably because they haven't nurtured internally along the way, they've had to go and outsource it.
Well, because the structure of a dealer group is that the dealership itself rarely has that function.
True.
It's at a group level. And so, sometimes it happens at a dealership level, but not very often. And so the people that come in to do those indirect commercial functions tend to come from outside of the sector. And at that point, there is an inflow of women. But then those women tend to not then proceed to the top job because they are not operational. They haven't come from the operational part of the business and the MDs and the CEOs are usually from the operational part, such as from the sales side. Hence, there aren't many. Well, there are only 3% of women are in the general manager roles in the dealerships, and there are none filling the CEO level.
Wow. Okay. And so the focus of the sort of 30% automotive 30% club is to clearly increase those numbers.
Yes, and the reason for the title of the 30% club is that we are aiming to fill 30% of key leadership roles with women by 2030, which gives us a 30 by 30 strategy. Now, it's important to kind of define what key leadership roles are, because it's not that those that are just at the top. So obviously they are key leadership roles, but it's not just the top roles. You can be a leader at any level. And this is one of the key points. So, for example, if we know there are only 3% of the general manager roles at dealerships, that's the head of business. It's the person that's the top of the dealership, if you like. If only 3% are women, and that is a key role to actually become a CEO sometime in the future. It's very rare you become a CEO if you've never been a general manager. Then you've got a very limited pool of females to choose from to go up to the top role. So therefore that becomes a key leadership role that we have to aim for 30% of. And then you have to then work back, because if you need more female general managers, you have to think, well, where are you going to get them from? And so therefore you have to work back. Well, actually the key role to become a general manager is usually the sales manager. So how many sales managers that are female do we have? And then you have to work back to that. How many sales executives, if that's the usual progression ladder. So in fact, although the way I describe it is key leadership roles, for a CEO to have on their management dashboard of KPIs, they have to have just some very simple numbers to monitor. They should be identifying 2 or 3 of these key leadership roles, because in order to get the changes in those roles, the numbers for those roles, it will drive change in all the other operational roles.
It'll all filter down, won't it?
Yeah.
Wow. And what do you think is going to happen even beyond that? So the sort of future of this sort of sector, you said earlier that it's a passion of yours. So how do you see it all panning out? What is the future, do you think?
Well, there are a number of technological changes that are taking place. One is the race to electrification. Which is not necessarily something that many of the manufacturer product development communities believe is the right goal. It's a interim step. So the right goal is probably something like hydrogen as a fuel, because electrification still isn't clean.
No.
But governments and politicians don't seem to have quite woken up to the fact that that's not necessarily going to be the right solution. So there's a lot of, obviously, political influence driving electrification. And the main driver is that the manufacturers have to meet their emissions targets.
Yes.
So I sit in presentations where I'll hear, but customers aren't ready for electric cars, and it's not going to happen for another 15, 20 years. And I just know that that's rubbish, because I know that the plans of the major manufacturers is to go to electrification really quickly because they have to meet the emissions targets, and it's too costly not to. So it will be a push out from the manufacturers, just really like the sector always has been. The sector has always pushed out to customers, and the dealers have been the way of doing that. So that's one thing, which will then, of course, have a huge ripple out effect as the manufacturers switch very quickly to electric-driven vehicles. The dealer network will have to upscale their skills in being able to manage and handle electric cars. There's a big push by the IMI at the moment to try and make it mandatory to be fully qualified to be able to work on an electric car.
What's the IMO?
So the Institute for the Motor Industry. So they're lobbying government to try and make it a requirement to be fully qualified. Yes, because it's dangerous.
Yeah, sure,
to not do.
Yeah.
So that's just one small ripple effect. The other thing, of course, is the connected car, and how we will be, engaging. The manufacturer will be engaging directly with the car and with the customers through the connectivity of the vehicle. Again, driving huge changes, but also moving car manufacturers into the realms of big data. So they are beginning to collect or establish divisions and arms that are looking at how they manage and store big data, which in itself is an industry.
Sure. Yeah.
And is likely to be why the Googles and the Apples are interested in cars. They're not really interested in cars. They're interested in the data that the car creates in its journey with customers. The final one, which is the one that everyone's really excited about, obviously, and gets the biggest press, is the autonomous vehicles that are coming on board. People like Volvo pegging it completely with their company goal to have 0 fatalities in Volvos.
Okay. That's a big target.
Yeah, but they've already achieved it with one car. It's had 0 fatalities for a number of years. I can't remember which model it is now. So they are, for the right reasons, really adopting autonomous vehicles as saying it is a safer way to travel, because most accidents are driver error.
Definitely.
And when we look at how it can liberate people, the idea of blind people or disabled people being able to very easily travel, transportation, that's all quite exciting. How it works in terms of the intelligent mobility and ensuring that all, the systems around cities can accommodate autonomous vehicles. I know that the Transport Systems Catapult is working very hard on trying to come up with solutions for things like that, and that the UK is putting itself in the forefront of being a place that we can trial these things. But I think that perhaps self-driving cars are maybe a little bit further away than the commercial manifestation of it. So things like trucks would probably create much more financial benefits immediately to truck operators if there was no driver required. That they didn't need to stop and have rest periods and things like that. And a lot of fatalities are caused through truck driver error. So I think that those three kind of major areas of connectivity, electrification or alternative fuels, and autonomous vehicles makes the industry an amazingly fascinating place to be. And so that kind of change is going to drive massive changes in terms of how we take products to market as well. So it's my understanding that at least a couple of the major manufacturers that I'm connected with are looking at changing their business model from selling cars to miles driven, which means that they won't ever really let go of the car. They won't hand over the ownership of the car. So people will have a variety of different forms of usage, ranging from long-term leasing, which kind of exists now, to pay-as-you-go, very short-term Uber-type trips on vehicles, ride sharing, etc. And it's not necessarily that we're all going to go from one element to the other. It's that we'll dip in and out of every single type, depending where we are. Are we in a city? Are we in the countryside? Are we just nipping to the shops? Are we going on holiday? Every different type of usage will have a solution that's much more efficient and effective than the current one, which is you buy a car and it sits on the drive for 12 out of 24 hours.
Sure, that's exactly. Sally P was on a previous episode, and obviously the business she's working for, Unity, and that's clearly a hole that they're going to successfully fill. So yeah, very 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 exciting. So what you've just explained there in relation to the sort of automotive 30% club is creating the excitement and the opportunities, and you've got the manufacturers and the dealerships on board to help support that, and they're now also collaborating financially to help grow the club, which is fantastic. But as you said, you then got to inspire the next generation and feed them the information and the knowledge that they know that this exists. So that's then neatly sort of led on to Gaia Innovation, which you launched at the same time. So for those that aren't aware of Gaia, what are you doing? So how is that going to help sort of promote and push the next generation up the ladder, as it were?
Okay, so Gaia Innovation's goal is to achieve the best employment destination for every child.
Okay.
Which is like a huge vision statement.
Massive statement. It's a great statement.
We have to start somewhere, don't we?
Yeah.
Aim high, moonshot thinking. And at the moment that doesn't happen, because if you think about the fact that within schools schools are measured on, do they have children that end up in a positive destination or a negative destination?
Okay.
And a negative destination is classed as a child that ends up with not in education, employment or training at the age of 16.
Okay.
Everyone else is classed as a positive destination. But of course, just because they stayed on at school and did A-levels or got an apprenticeship or went to college doesn't mean to say it was the best destination. And so this is where Gaia Innovation comes in, because most careers insight or employer engagement is based around a school's perspective of we need the children to interact with employers, but we don't really know what the content or subject matter of that should be, because we're education people and we're not employers. So what Gaia Innovation does is it looks through the eyes of the employer at the school and says, well, this is actually what we need. We need children with these type of skills. They need to have numeracy and literacy, creativity, technology. They need to be able to have good personal and social skills to be employable. And we, as certain sectors, need to have more chance of attracting those than others. And the sectors that need them are the growth sectors of health, energy, automotive, engineering, digital. Those are the types of growth sectors, the space economy as well. That we need to be encouraging children to find out more about, because those are the 21st century industries where there will be more opportunity for employment. To kind of encourage children to continue down the route of professions such as accountancy or law, they have to be aware that in fact those jobs there will be fewer of them. So competition will be very high. So if that's what they really want to do, that's brilliant. But they have to be aware of the competition out there to get those fewer roles. Whereas with the growth sectors, there's a place for you, whatever your skill level is, whatever your interest is. There's a big enough need to pretty much soak up most of the population moving up through education. And at the moment, we just are running with issues in these sectors where companies can't scale up because they can't find the people. They can't, particularly with what we call STEAM skills, so science, technology, engineering, the arts, and maths. So arts being really important as a combination with the STEM skills. Yeah.
And so, as Gaia Innovation, how are you sort of creating?
How do we do that?
Yeah, how are you actually doing it?
So we have a number of products, if you like, that we implement. Some of them are just ad hoc inspirational events that are funded by altruistic donors or employer sponsors, where we will, and an example of that would be we run an annual International Women in Engineering Day event in Sheffield, and we have women from all over the UK that are in engineering technology come to the school and meet over 100 girls, do lots of interacting activities with them, inspirational speeches, telling them about their own personal story and why they overcame the challenges of being like the only girl in the physics class and things like that. And we do know that as a result of that, schools have reported increased take-up of computer science at GCSE and the triple sciences at GCSE, which was the purpose of the event. It was to try to explain to them that if you don't take those subjects, the likelihood of you being able to study it later is greatly diminished. And a lot of that conversation isn't done with youngsters when they're choosing their options.
Okay. Why not? Why isn't it?
Because the schools don't necessarily know. So somebody, for example, we had Nicola Goff, who's head of closures engineer at Bentley, explaining about the importance of to do an engineering degree, you've got to have got A-level physics. To do A-level physics, you've really got to take the triple science at GCSE, where you take all three separately, because combined science, the physics that you'll learn in that will not be deep enough for you to really take on board the A-level physics course. So your school will actively encourage you not to take A-level physics if you've only taken combined GCSE. And they don't realise that. But the schools are listening there thinking, well, we didn't realise that you had to do, so is it so important to have physics A-level? So it's, it's things like that these events are not only eye-opening for the girls, because that was specifically for girls. We do them for, mixed audiences as well, but also for the schools that accompany them that are beginning to take on board those kind of messages. The other thing that we do is much more of a strategic long-term programme, which is called Inspiration for Innovation. And an example of this is the programme that we're working with the Silverstone Park with through Rosbird of MEPC. And in that programme, we are partnering the client, so Silverstone Park, with 3 schools in the area. And we help the schools to develop an employer engagement strategy, which will include a number of meaningful encounters with people from the world of work. And we help the schools to design those activities to create a variety. And we help the employer to create a volunteer network that we can kind of be there hand-holding a little bit and coaching and supporting in terms of the way to most effectively volunteer in schools.
And what's a meaningful encounter for those listening? What does that mean?
Well, that's a really good question.
What does it mean?
Yes, because it's you try to find it defined anywhere in the National Careers Strategy or Careers and Enterprise Company material. No, so we have defined it from a business perspective. What would be meaningful? So it's at the first level of evaluation that we look at initially. So in order to assess whether it was a meaningful encounter, we have to have identified what was the objective of the activity in the first place. So what did we want to happen? So an example of this would be, we've just had a tour of the Silverstone Park undertaken by one of our schools, which is the UTC. And before they came on the tour, we asked them, did they feel that they knew a lot about the businesses that were on the park, and also if they would be interested in being employed on them in the park. And they did this fantastic tour and met Force India and Hexagon and had a great time. And at the end of the tour, we asked them again, and what we found was that they said 100% of the children now understood all about the companies that were on the park. and 74% of them said that they would want to work in one of those companies.
Boom.
So it's a really, that's how we would say it's been meaningful. Because if it had come away and it had been no,
failure.
no, I don't know, still don't know about the companies, and I still don't know if I want to work there, then that wouldn't have been very meaningful. We obviously collect lots of verbatim feedback, and people saying how great it was, but that happens in a lot of situations where people are doing these kind of engagements. They'll collect the verbatims and the nice feelings, but they won't really robustly monitor it with metrics. So in terms of other meaningful impacts, meaningful encounters, when our volunteers go into a school, we will say to them, and with the school, identify what it is that you specifically want to try and kind of hit the nail on the head with this particular encounter, so that the volunteer can then kind of adapt their material or their talk to make sure that they are providing that kind of insight, and then monitor it again at the end to see whether there's been any either change in understanding or a change in behaviour or a change in attitude. That's the kind of thing we're looking for. You can't really assess all three. You have to try and keep it simple. And then what the plan would be is, over time, would be to see, was there actually therefore any change in these children that we engaged with throughout the whole year?
A change in their sort of behaviour or decision making or actions.
So for example, in the one I gave before, the International Women in Engineering Day, the school that hosted the event this year has reported for the first time 50-50 boy-girl applications to do computer science at GCSE, and it's just never been heard of before. It's only been about 10% girls.
Amazing.
So having done that event twice, it's now kind of filtered through to see a significant change at the next level. So the first level was on the day it happened, but then you'd see that there was a behavioural change that it could only really tie to the event. So what we would be looking at, particularly with our partner schools, is was there suddenly a change in pattern of the choices that took place at GCSE, or was there a change in choices taken at A level? So we'll be asking them to look at things like that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. My firm Longhurst and I are a volunteer, and so what's really good and pretty cool is that the volunteers going in aren't just business owners that specialise in sort of and run tech businesses or manufacturing businesses or automotive businesses. You're also sending in my case, a financial planner, a chartered financial planner, to go in and talk to the children about the importance of financial literacy. And how that can help you get through certain doors, and then obviously from a career perspective move up the ladder, but also from a sort of in my case I'm going in next week to a school to talk to them about and introducing them to behaviour around money, because as soon as they enter the workforce they will be earning for the very first time, for some of them at least, and presumably and predictably some of them, or a lot of them, may not have come from backgrounds where the parents have been encouraging or installing positive or sensible sort of money behaviour, and so certainly I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to the feedback that we get on that. But yeah, I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. Have you got any examples of challenges that some of these children are facing at the moment? So we're talking about obviously helping them on their sort of career path, but any other sort of challenges sort of within the school and also the schools themselves? What other challenges are they facing? Presumably there's funding issues and other things like that. What's the environment that exists there at the moment?
It's an extremely challenging environment in education as a whole. The funding levels are declining year on year in terms of what the real budgets that the schools get to spend on education.
I was going to say, because in the press you hear these stories where it's the government are coming out saying that they're pumping X and Y into schooling, but that's presumably not the case.
No, because what they'll very carefully say is it's in education. And so there was an announcement recently where they declared that they were spending more on education in the UK than ever before. But an analysis by a third party found that they were including in student loan numbers in that.
Right.
So that is not education as such, that's lending people money to get access education. So it certainly is not something they should be using in response to questions about how well funded are schools. So the real issue with schools is that there's a funding crisis. There's also a skills crisis. So many schools find it very hard to find and retain maths teachers.
Really?
Yeah. So, well, as you can imagine, if you're very good at maths, there's a whole host of opportunities
actually,
in life.
I say really, but I was good at maths, but got into finance. But I understand actually.
You can earn 2 or 3 times more than a teacher can if you're very good at maths.
Yeah.
So I know of schools that are teaching maths in lecture theatre style environments because they're having to cover 100 children at a time with one teacher.
Wow.
Which is not ideal for kind of 13-year-olds, is it really? No. So, and the same goes for physics teachers. Highly sought after, just can't find people with the right...
or keep them.
Well, they tend to be people coming back out of retirement that are just often not the right profile of teacher nowadays as well. So, it's kind of a double whammy of how do you make physics interesting when you've got slightly old school teachers teaching it. So there's 2 issues. There's the funding, there's the skills problem, but also on top of that, there's the fact that the National Career Strategy is now imposing another requirement on schools, which is they are now fully responsible for all careers advice and intervention with children. It used to be funded separately, and there used to be I don't know if you remember it, but there was something called Connections out there, which was the career service for youngsters in schools. That was closed down as a saving in 2010. The responsibility for careers passed to schools, but no budget. And so schools have now got the obligation of providing a meaningful encounter for every child every year, so at least 7 in their time at school. Which, if you imagine, for a school that's got 250 children in a year group, it's quite a lot of activities taking place that they then have to prove to be meaningful, on top of actually still trying to teach and find skilled teachers to teach. So it's a very big challenge in schools. The other challenge that we face, and this is something that really I believe is perhaps the biggest positive influence that employers can have on children in this employer engagement, and that is on their emotional and mental health.
Yes. Because,
as I'm sure you'll have picked up in the press and probably people that you know as well, we seem to be going through a tsunami of mental health problems hitting teenagers and even younger, actually, in some situations. Some of it is driven by poor education. I heard the number of boys entering secondary school that can't read, or poor literacy, is increasing every year.
Mad.
And that's also as a result of the number of children. Every year in primary school, the teachers report that the amount of words that a child knows, or their vocabulary, is declining every year. They can actually see it declining every year. So young children coming in not having any literacy or very poor verbal skills, possibly because parents aren't talking to them in the way that they used to, because they're distracted with iPads and iPhones,
technology and social media.
And so from that point on, it's a challenge to try and put them back to where they really should be. And boys in particular are still falling behind at that in primary school. So then trying to navigate around secondary school, where all GCSEs now have a high level of literacy requirement in them, even arts. 60% of the art course, art GCSE, is pretty much writing about art rather than doing it. So if you've got poor literacy skills, the door is closed on you for your education. And so having that as a realisation quite early on as a teenager, it can lead to behavioural issues, mental health problems. How do I get myself out of this situation? Because I'd kind of thought I'd just get through, but it's now realising that the fact that my reading is so poor, I can't understand anything. I think I'll probably go off and work as a mechanic or something, and now I'm finding out that actually you've got to have maths and English and computer science GCSE to be a car mechanic. The world has changed so much. I can't even be a driver in the future because they're all going to be self-driving cars.
Yeah, God, yes.
Yeah, so it's
very real.
Yeah, so there is that element, and then there's also the other element of mental health issues around anxiety because of the pressure of exams. We really are in a bit of an exam factory, hothouse situation a lot with schools, because schools are tasked so much to deliver GCSE results and not necessarily on their input, quality of input. It's all on just the numbers at the end of the day. So there's a lot of pressure passed from school to pupil in terms of you must pass this because it will make us look bad if you don't pass it.
Right.
And then there's what I would call an amplifier, really, right? It's not necessarily the cause, because I have talked to very experienced teachers about this who say, they've been teaching for 30 years and they've never seen anything like it in terms of teenage girls, particularly, doing self-harming, taking overdoses, nervous breakdowns, because it's amplified by social media.
Yes.
So we're in this kind of world where everybody has to be liked. It's the popularity economy, isn't it? It's you've got to look good. You've got to have everybody following you. You've got to be, the most popular kid in the class.
Yeah.
And if somebody starts to undermine that or bully or say unpleasant things, that whole self-image starts to fracture, and it becomes a very, very important negative thing to them, and they go on a downward spiral. And quite often parents have no idea that it's happening. They'll see a slight change in behaviour in the way that the youngster is holding themselves or dressing or whatever, but they'll very rarely express these anxieties and sadnesses to the parents.
Until it's too late, perhaps.
It goes internally. They put it into themselves, and they'll sometimes come off social media for a while. But the teachers seem to think it's not social media's fault, because it's always there. It was always there. We all had teenage angst, and we all have, we all used to listen to the Smiths, things like that in closed bedrooms with the duvet over. But because now it can be shared, it's like it can be caught. It's infectious. So whereas it was something that everyone kind of did individually and just felt down that day, now it's I feel down. Oh, me too. And then it's and let's say everybody starts to look at their own life in that same way. And so it is. Social media is literally a virus that spreads.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay. Wow.
So I think that employers just going into schools and saying, look, hey, we all get through this.
Yeah.
There are ways to deal with challenges. You have to, here's how to be resilient. Here's how to cope. Here's who you should talk to. Talking is so important.
Yep.
Social media can be fantastic as a support network.
Yep.
So switch the dynamic and say, if somebody says you're down, let's all think, right, so how will we solve this? Not all kind of join in the sadness and moping kind of thing. So any kind of tips and techniques that we've all used to say, well, tomorrow's another day. One of the things that I used with my teenagers, it came to me once because I had the unfortunate situation of having a daughter that's constantly injuring herself, in terms of skiing accidents and tooth knocked out or whatever. And I noticed at the Sheffield Children's Hospital, where we would turn up quite regularly, luckily it wasn't always with me that she'd had these incidents. Otherwise I think the social services would have been exploring, but no. Then the surgeons and the medics would say, how does it hurt on a scale of 0 to 10? and she would be able to say, well, it's like a 7 or an 8 or it's only a 3. Straight away, she'd be able to say what it was. And I thought, that's really interesting. They must use that scale because maybe most kids actually can identify. There must be some kind of relativity of that scale to most people. So what I decided to do with my teenagers to say, if I could see they were feeling down, how do you feel today on a scale of 0 to 10? But by telling them, calibrating it to say, you know what, most people feel about a 4 on a school day or a work day, 5 if something went well. Going to a party, that's about an 8, or smashing that GCSE result A, that's about an 8. We very rarely get to a 9. But if you get into a 1 or a 2, then you really need to come and talk. How can we get back to a 4?
Yep.
And so I shared that with my teenagers, who thought it was really good.
Yeah.
And they're now talking to their friends about it. And so when they say, oh, I feel like a 3, oh, come on, what should we do to make a 4 then? Do we need to go and get some ice cream, or do we need to go and watch a movie or something?
Yeah. Ice cream always helps.
Yeah, and so I've now shared that with their school as well, and they love it as well in terms of, it's just a scale of happiness.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm going to use that. I've got a fantastic section on our company website titled Wisdom, and there's different subjects on there, and one of them is called happiness, because the UN issued a happiness report. I think it was last year. It officially came out, and the UK sit sort of 16th on that. Nordic countries sit in the top 10. And so I might put that on there. Actually, that's a 1 to 10. 4's normal.
Well, what I found was that the youngsters didn't realise that 4 was normal. You know what I mean? They were looking for an 8 all the time.
Yeah, unrealistic.
Because social media says everyone's hitting an 8 every day. You look at the fantastic things they're doing.
That's sort of nonsense and noise, isn't it?
And of course it's like, no, that's not real.
It's not real.
So, yeah.
I tell you what, though, if I got an A, I think I'd have been a 10, to be honest. But yeah, I understand. But I really like that. So look, I'm going to need to sort of draw the interview to a close because we've been doing 51 minutes already. Literally been gas bagging for 51 minutes. But for some things, I first of all just want to thank you for doing what you're doing with these two sort of organisations. I volunteered to be part of the Gaia Innovation project and the school project, but I didn't realise my learning today about the connection with the 30% club. And so keep it up. It's really, really, really impressive. It's critically important. And I know that the other businesses within the STC that have volunteered are all enthused and excited about getting involved. Some are quite nervous, naturally, standing in front of a room full of teenagers and kids. I'm a little bit nervous about doing it next week, but I'm dragging my partner Louise this weekend to do just to sit and be a guinea pig so that I can talk in front of her. Bless her. But yeah, keep it up. It's fantastic, and hopefully, certainly within the Silverstone Business Park region and the businesses and business leaders that are listening to this podcast over the coming weeks, months, and years, hopefully they will put their hand up and say actually they can get involved. And we definitely want you to come back on the podcast in maybe a year's time to give us an update with how it's all going, and whether we can get some and you'll have some numbers, hopefully some more data, because we love data, right? So how's it all going, these positive experiences and meaningful experiences, and maybe even get some feedback on how I did. That would be fantastic.
Start with that one.
Absolutely, if I get invited back by the school. But just a couple of questions to close off the interview, and then I'll let you get sort of home. First question, and I say with a big smile on my face, and this is normally where the guest sort of sinks in their seat, is a question over embarrassing mistakes or anything sort of reflective or funny that you can think of, preferably sort of business related or work life related, but even just throughout your life, anything that's happened that you'd be prepared to share with our wonderful listeners.
Yeah, and I knew this was coming, but it's. The only thing I can think of that I can share without damaging any kind of client relations or colleague relations or anything, I'll just damage family relations instead by telling a story that happened a long time ago. So I was about 8 years old, and we were at a ferry terminal, I think is in my head. That's where we were.
Right.
And my father was leaning over a banister looking down, and I thought it'd be really funny to just go out and to give him a really good smack on the bum. So I did, and of course turned around, it wasn't my dad.
Oh my god, who was it? Just some random?
It was just some random poor man who just looked at me and said, "You've just abused me when you're 8 years old."
So it's okay, and presumably you haven't done that again. You're not going to walk around the STC slapping people's bottoms. That's not a Julia thing.
It's something that, I learned from an early age that's just not done.
Probably not the right thing to do. What a great story. Right, that's definitely going to sit in the sort of top 3 or 5 of the funny stories. Good. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before I get on to the last question, is there anything that I haven't asked you, or anything that you haven't covered off that whilst I've got you on the show that you'd like to say?
Well, I suppose I would like to just share a little bit about what we hope volunteers achieve from their volunteering with Gaia Innovation. So this is kind of related to the next question that you want.
Next question's about life lessons for Chris Broome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is, because you're a volunteer, it is a life lesson.
Okay, do it.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. So the concept that drives what I hope volunteers will achieve from being part of our network is taken from a Japanese concept called ikigai.
Okay.
And ikigai is the reason for being. And what it suggests is that in order to have this true sense of fulfillment in life, self-actualization, you have to get the right balance between a number of factors.
Okay.
And this is something I also tell school children as well, in terms of how you choose the right path in life. But this is something that we hope, or I hope that you, Chris, will be able to adopt. And that is, first of all, you should do something in life that you are passionate about or love to do. So if you love to do something, you really should do it.
Yes.
You should also do something that you're good at.
That helps.
So if you really love to do something but you're not very good at it, that's probably not a great thing to do.
Yeah.
It should also be something that you can get well paid for.
Indeed.
That's my problem at the moment.
Okay. At the moment.
I'm still building to make sure that I will get some money back from my investments eventually.
Sure.
And then finally, the thing that you do that you love, that you're good at and that you get paid for should actually be what society needs.
Yeah.
So what we hope is that by being employed in the situation that you are, you will also find time to ensure that you're doing something that society needs. And our society truly needs real model people to engage with youngsters in schools, to inspire them to aim higher, to be successful in all ways that they can, to be resilient, to overcome challenges, and to just really navigate their way through life as a teenager.
Yeah, twists and turns.
Yeah.
Not just as a teenager, but then a young adult, and then onwards.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop, does it?
Yeah, and I think that for you, say personal advice for you, it's if you can achieve these things, then you will find a sense of reason for being and happiness.
Sage advice, very, very good. I think I know this term and phraseology because I've got a friend within the profession who runs an organisation where he has that saying as their company motto. So, Richard, bravo! It's a fantastic mythology, and clearly, Julia, thank you for that advice. And from my perspective, I am enthused and inspired and very excited about going into the school next week. Hopefully talking to these young adults about financial behaviour and money behaviour will provide value to them. Even if just one person from there takes something from it, I think that will have been a success. So again, thank you very much for putting these two sort of organisations together. So that's the Automotive 30% Club and Gaia Innovation. And thank you very much for coming on the show. if it's okay, I'll get some website links and some other bits and bobs that we can put into the show notes. So those that are listening, if they want to find out more about obviously the organisations or anything else that you want to sort of guide them to, presumably you can send those links to me and we can include those.
Yeah.
Great. And then, as I said, if we can get you back on next year, that would be awesome. Some feedback with how the STC businesses are getting on with volunteering and how the schools are sort of responding to that, I think would be really beneficial for everybody. So once again, thanks for coming on the show, and I'll speak to you soon.
Great, thank you very much.
The Inside Silverstone podcast is produced by the team at Longhurst for the benefit of those with a passion for all things tech, engineering and innovation. For more information, please visit longhurst.co.uk/Inside Silverstone, whilst also remembering to give us a 5 out of 5 star rating on iTunes. Please note that neither Chris Broome or Longhurst work for Silverstone Park, Silverstone Circuit or Silverstone Technology Cluster.